All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 6:30 on Tuesday, September 22nd. City Council reserves the right to adjourn into executive session at any time during the course of this meeting to discuss any of the matters listed below as authorized by the Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, .072, .073, .074, .076, and .086. The City Council reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session, executive session, or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. All matters listed below shall be eligible for both discussion and action unless otherwise specifically noted. It is 6:30. We have 5 of us here in council chambers, 1 of us virtually, so we have a full quorum, and I'm calling us to order. If you are with us in council chambers, if you would please rise, we will say the pledges to both flags. If you would please remain standing, we are honored to have Pastor Robert Oliver with us this evening. He's one of our police chaplains, and he will be offering our invocation. Pastor Oliver.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for those who are gathered here today to seek the welfare of our community. We pray that you would give them wisdom and insight and agreement. We ask that you would protect the city of Bastrop from COVID in particular. We ask that you bring healing to our nation and begin with our city and with our people. We pray for relationships between races and between those in authority and the police as well as citizens. We ask that there would be a sense of brotherhood and love and kindness toward one another. We ask that you would prosper our community both physically and spiritually. We ask your protection and blessing on all those here tonight. In the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Oliver. Really appreciate your time. It's always good to hear from our chaplains. Everyone may be seated. Council, we're on the bottom of page 1, which is the mayor's report, and I don't have any slides tonight, but I do have a few things, and I promise to try to go through them pretty quickly. The first thing I want to do is kind of visit with you about what I have done, and in some instances what we've all done together since we were all together at our last council meeting. We had on September 14th the first virtual region meeting for TML. TML Region 10 had a virtual roundtable with Chairman Cyrier and Representative Rainey. There were over 30 people that participated, and I know Council, several of you participated, and we're trying to get geared up and be in the right place for the next legislative session, so I appreciate those who participated. On September 15th, last Tuesday, City Manager Hoffman and I presented to Rotary, kind of did a update on things happening in the city and a little overview on the budget, and it was well received. They were very polite and said that we both did a good job. On Thursday, the 17th, we had our annual City Council and Board and Commissions ethics training. We had 58 participants, and I want to especially thank our City Attorney, Alan Borquez, for an outstanding job. Judge Dugan had some really good words of wisdom, and I was really impressed with the virtual nature. Alan just did an excellent job of answering questions when it was appropriate, and we really had a higher participation and more engagement, and still were able to get out and pretty close to 2 hours, but really enjoyed that training and appreciate Alan doing such a fantastic job for us. Earlier that morning, also on September 17th, I had announced at the last council meeting that morning there would be a fresh produce distribution, and I wanted to give you guys some feedback on that. They distributed in barely an hour 768 boxes to the public. And there was a little traffic jam. There was a lot of people there, but once the truck got there, everything got distributed right away. In addition, they gave 12 pallets of food, produce, fresh produce, to nonprofits like Feed the Need, the Hands Up High ministry. There was a Head Start, a woman out at Stony Point that used Head Start to pass food out at Stony Point. So just really, really thankful for Bastrop First and for all of the folks who participated in that volunteerism and that made that available for our folks. This Thursday, on the September 24th, I'll be making a presentation to the Lions Club. And I can't talk about the community without saying, has everybody seen the new facade on the Main Street portion of 921 Main? It's not completely finished, but it's about 99% done, and I think it just really looks stunning. I wanted to talk about a couple things about our city employees. Last Friday, several of us attended the Employee Appreciation Lunch, and just want to send out a special thank you to Tanya, and there was a large group of people that helped her, but I think the employees really enjoyed spending some time together with some really good food. That we had some folks celebrating everything from 5 years to 30 years with the city, and it was just great for everyone to be together. And talking about our employees, I have one story that I have to share with you guys. On Monday at 12:07 p.m., not that I'm paying attention, but it was 12:07 p.m., I got an email from someone saying that they had some concerns and they didn't think anything was going to be done, and I'm emailing you because I don't know who else to email. And I wrote them back and said, I appreciate your concerns, and I'm copying our city manager. He takes care of our day-to-day operations. And at 11 a.m. this morning, so that is less than 24 hours, her email went from, I have some concerns and I hope someone will listen to me, to the last words of her email were, I am a happy camper. And it was because Curtis Hancock had called her, had gone out and checked on it, and had the repairs scheduled. So hats off to Curtis Hancock and our city manager, and just a reminder to our citizens that, and we'll even have a conversation about a way to report those kind of concerns, but when we know about it, we take care of things. So I'm very appreciative to both our city manager and to Curtis Hancock. I also received an email from a woman who lived in Orange, Texas. She evacuated due to Hurricane Laura and found herself in the Bastrop community. This sweet lady thanked everyone from the pharmacist she interacted with at one of our local pharmacies to the veterinarian that she interacted with at Bastrop Veterinarian Hospital. She was like, this is the best place ever. So I told her that she's welcome anytime and come on back. So I just really appreciate the fact that we have a friendly community. Moving on to a couple other things. Today was National Voters Registration Day. Not the very, very best weather for it, but over at First National Bank there were several volunteers, and kudos to them for sticking it out and helping us on National Voters Registration Day. Just a reminder to everyone that you can register to vote through October 5th. If you're not already registered, please do that, and that early voting starts on October 13th, and that's not an accident. Monday is a federal holiday, so early voting starts on Tuesday, October 13th. And then my last two items, because we're doing budgets and people are talking about tax rates and government and overall, and I wanted to share that I got access to some information from the Workforce Commission, and you guys know that we're a part of the Rural Workforce Commission, and in August, the unemployment rate in our capital area, rural capital area, where we're considered a part of, it was down to 5.1% in August, and that was down from 6.3 in July. The state average is 7% of unemployment, and the national average is 8%. So this is my stump speech to say it's a great time to live in Bastrop, Texas. So I was very happy to see those numbers going in the right direction. And along those lines, and this is my last little pitch, one of the things that we here, Tracy and Paul and myself, and I know all the council that we look at a lot, is our sales tax allocation. You guys know from talking about the budget that our sales tax is 42% of our general fund, and our property tax is only 32%. So the last set of data that I got, if you look at year-to-date this year compared to year-to-date last year, okay? So we're comparing an apple to an apple. The city of Austin went down $2 million. That was 1% of their sales tax. I dare say they didn't even miss it. The city of Bastrop went up $400,000. That was 6.4%. The unincorporated areas of Bastrop County went up $500,000, which is 14.2%. So I would say to you, if you are a resident of the city of Bastrop, anytime you are shopping at any store that we have in the city of Bastrop, if you are shopping in Austin, if you're running your errands somewhere else and you think, gee, I'm just going to stop there, that ultimately impacts our general fund, which ultimately drives our need for our property tax rate. So we often say shop local, shop small, shop local, and that's awesome, and we need to do that, and we need to support our Main Street vendors, and we need to support our local restaurants. But there is also a need to spend your dollars here at home so that we get the advantage of that, because the city of Austin isn't even going to miss it, and it makes a huge difference to us with our local municipality. So I will now climb down off my civics high horse, and we will go to page 2, Councilmember reports. Councilmember Peterson, do you have anything to share with us?
Thanks, Mayor, but nothing tonight.
Councilmember Rogers?
No, Mayor, nothing. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes, ma'am, real quick. On the 9th, I attended the CAPCOG's Executive Committee meeting and was named to the nominating committee for the second year in a row, and I will report out the results of the committee's work and the actions by the General Assembly relative to the Executive Committee at CAPCOG. As you know, it's a vitally important the role that CAPCOG plays in our region through regional planning, anything from law enforcement to solid waste to emergency management to communications, and it's important that we as a community be at the forefront of that thought and planning process. So I'm eagerly anticipating another positive year. Also want to echo your comments relative to the boards and commission orientation. I appreciate that Alan took very dry subject matter such as the ethics, rules and regulations, open meetings, and well, now for open records material, and made it extraordinarily interesting. So thank you, Alan, for doing that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Nelson. Councilmember Ennis?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to tag along on your comments about the employee luncheon. For those who in watching tonight, we did socially distance, and we were masked and checked before we walked in the door. Our employees did a wonderful job of putting all that together, and it was a very carefully prepared event. Second thing I'd like to say was and I don't want to steal the city manager's thunder, so I'm just going to mention it in case he brings it up. I attended the Visit Bastrop board meeting this week, and if you're going to say something, sir,
go ahead.
Okay. They're hard at work. They're meeting the mark at cutting costs as much as they can and still be able to be effective. They're doing the heavy lifting in meeting the challenges of I was going to say the decade, but it's more than that. And I have to say I'm proud of all the work they're doing. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Ennis. Councilmember Jackson?
I'd just like to say that I attended we've had 2 meetings now with the Bastrop Music Friendly Advisory Board. We've met with the Visit Bastrop group, and it's going along real fast. A lot of things are happening. Our chair, who's the new gentleman that's moved into our community, and all the other members are really excited about this new designation, and glad to see all the press releases have come out, and Mayor, your presentation also on television and everything, promoting the music-friendly community designation that we received. I think our committee, our board is really working hard now to take that designation and really work with it. And I see some really great things happening with the recognition of the different venues that we have, and as soon as COVID will allow us, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of other music venues and other activities and events coming forward in Bastrop. And on a somber note, I just wanted to put out condolences to the family of our Chief Justice, Associate Chief Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and to her family on the loss that for all the wonderful things that she's done for our country. She was definitely an icon and someone that I respected, and I'm sure several people do, for all the many years of service, even before she was on the Supreme Court. Just wanted to say, that we should all try to keep her family in prayers and hope that this process that's about to begin to replace her is a civil one, and that we get a very good Chief Associate Justice to replace her. And that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. We're on 4C, City Manager Report.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll cover also some recent presentations that were made. The mayor did a great job of describing the September 15th Rotary presentation. The day before that, a team of folks from Bastrop and our partner organizations gave a presentation to about 60 participants in an Austin Board of Realtors meeting. And I understand that they did a great job. It's no secret that our B3 codes are still a subject of some getting used to by people in the community. And I will say I've seen Mr. Joe present how all of that works and what property owners and developers, what their options are in dealing with all the flexibility that is built in to the B3 codes. And he does just a remarkable job of letting people know what their options are and putting them at ease, and appreciate the team that was put together to present the city of Bastrop in a very positive light to a pretty important audience with the Austin Board of Realtors. So congratulations and thank you to that team. Congratulations also to Mayor Schrader. You guys were keeping up with what was going on with the Texas Municipal League board elections. There was no election process. All of the incumbents, or I should say none of the incumbents, drew an opponent, so there was no ballot process. There was no election. So thank you, Mayor Schrader, for continuing your good and hard work to represent the city of Bastrop in that important capacity. I will also offer very briefly my own words of appreciation to everyone who had something to do with Friday's employee luncheon. It was my first employee luncheon event as your city manager, and I thoroughly enjoyed it myself. Southside Barbecue gets a particular shout out not only for providing great food, but for taking great care to present it and provide it safely. And yeah, and I'll echo the comments already made about Tanya and her team for really taking care to provide a safe event. A few words about the implementation of MyGov. That is an important work effort. It is yet another way that we are improving the customer service approach here in Bastrop. The team is working really hard to make sure this is working and working correctly, and I think going about that the right way. I spent a little time in Friday's weekly memo going through a little bit of detail about those modules that are online and functioning today, and the mayor already mentioned this, and it's worth some emphasis. A really cool feature here is that citizens can go onto that system and document their concerns and create a record that does trigger a response from the appropriate staff person. So it's not just for developers and property owners and people who are trying to process a permit. And internally, we are getting used to it as well and using it. And that last message, we are blitzing the community with lots of public messaging about this to make sure we get the word out. So we're not finished. A module that is still under development speaks to how we process code enforcement issues, but that's coming. So thank you to the team for working on that. National Night Out is something else I mentioned in Friday's weekly memo, but I've got a little bit more detail to share with you this evening. And Council, you will each receive a more formal invitation from the city about this, but we would really appreciate and invite and encourage your participation in this year's event. This year's event will have a bit of a different look and feel to it. The team has created the concept of a parade of emergency vehicles that will follow a pre-planned route and visit those neighbors who are planning events at their homes or in their areas, and we will stop and have brief visits with all of those neighbors. Council members, if you would like to participate, we would like for you to show up at the convention center at 5:30 that evening. That's on October the 6th, and we'll brief you on what'll be happening. As the note says, if you'd like to ride along in one of our emergency vehicles, that's great. If you'd like to if you feel safer, not because our emergency vehicle operators don't know how to drive, but if you'll feel safer in your own vehicle, we can make that work too. So just let us know. And again, be there at 5:30, and the special treat plan that is cryptically mentioned on the PowerPoint slide will have our two new fire apparatus there, the pumper truck and the ladder truck, and you guys can crawl on them, touch them. We may not let you drive them, but you can get a feel for the new equipment. And we'll be very glad and excited to give you a tour of those pieces of equipment. We're all very excited about all that. So thank you to the police department for thinking through an effective and safe approach to National Night Out. And then my last announcement is kind of a big one, and it has everything to do with the Bastrop Police Department. So effective tomorrow, September 23rd, Clint Nagy, who will be the chief of the Bastrop Police Department, that's effective tomorrow, and he will no longer be serving in an interim capacity. So that decision enables another decision, that being it allows Chief Nagy to remove the interim label from Assistant Chief Vicki Stefanik. I want to go over the reasons why I am led to this decision. Number one, Chief Nagy is a known commodity. He knows the community knows him, and in a real sense, he's been interviewing for this role since even before he was assistant chief. And so there will be no surprises with Chief Nagy at the helm. Number two, Chief Nagy already leads a really good team. Over the past few years, our Part 1 crimes here in Bastrop have decreased, and our clearance rates have increased. That sort of thing happens for lots of reasons, but certainly effective leadership is one of those reasons. Number three, Chief Nagy knows policing, and he is a lifelong learner. As an example, he has written an impressive article that's interestingly entitled Strategies for Attracting and Retaining Top Talent While Improving Public Trust. I think that speaks volumes as to his mindset. And I've read his procedures, his policing procedures, including those procedures for de-escalation and conflict avoidance. I know the emphasis he puts on training on those subjects. He is never going to stop trying to make his department better. Reason number 4, Chief Nagy has a sincere desire to serve the public and to connect with the community. I have personally witnessed how Chief Stefanik and Chief Nagy interact with the public, how they interact with their staff, and how they interact with each other, and their focus on problem solving. I've had personal conversations with several community leaders, all of whom have direct knowledge of how the police department here in Bastrop operates and know Chief Nagy personally. I'll share some key words that were used by the people that I met with to describe Chief Nagy, and those words include connected, honest, sincere, respectful, not political, and stable. And finally, reason number 5, I have learned that I can trust him. The police chief and the city manager, and that relationship is unique and it's important. The police chief has, when you think about it, awesome responsibilities and authority. He has authorities the city manager doesn't have. So for me, in my approach to this has been a 6-week-long interview. And I appreciate the opportunity to get to know Clint better and to get a feel for his character. And I appreciate mostly that he leads with a servant's heart and he keeps his ego where it belongs. We'll be able to celebrate this appointment at a police department appreciation event that we will schedule for sometime in November. And at that time, we will formally pin the new chiefs and, by the way, the other really good hires we've been making recently in the Bastrop Police Department. At about right now, we'll be issuing a press statement on these appointments, and we're sending a special message from me to the members of the Bastrop Police Department. So thank you, Council. Chief Nagy this evening is at a training session out of town, but I'm sure he's watching. And of course, Assistant Chief Stefanik is here, and I hope you will help me congratulate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, City Manager. We will be looking forward to that celebration, and I want to personally thank the Police Department for their patience. It's been a long time coming. Council, we made a very active decision to wait until we had our full-time city manager, and Mr. Hoffman, we appreciate the diligence and hard work that you've put into making the selection. So congratulations, Chief Nagy, where you are, and I'm sure you are watching, and Assistant Chief Stefanik, we're just thrilled to have you, so congratulations. Okay, Council, City Manager, that was it for you, right? Kind of hard to top that. Okay, we're moving on to item 4D, which is a proclamation recognizing October 2nd as National Custodial Workers Recognition Day. There's 2 things I want to say about this before it's a short one, so I'll read this proclamation. One of the things we did at the employee lunch was take a moment of silence to remember Angie Perez. And those of us that work at City Hall and really back before COVID, the custodial workers were at all of the facilities and they know everybody. And I was really pleased that the employees decided to take a moment of silence and recognize her. I miss her all the time. She was a wonderful person, but I will tell you, before COVID and especially during COVID, our custodial workers are the reason that we haven't had cases at City Hall, the reason that our employees can feel safe coming to work. Mary is assigned to this building, and she is so cheerful, and she has her rag out, and she's like, I'm here to do doorknob duty, keeping you safe. And Back when this all started, she always has her mask on. She is the first person to tell, and she don't care who it is, back up. Like, you stay your 6 feet away. And they literally, through this COVID season, have our lives in their hands. And just like our police department, they're keeping us safe. And I just really appreciate them very, very much. So, whereas custodial workers contribute to important first impressions in the success of any business, and whereas custodial workers operate behind the scenes and are often underappreciated for the hard work they do day after day after day, keeping facilities clean and well-maintained, the City of Bastrop recognizes the often thankless job performed by these dedicated workers today, and as a reminder, year-round. Whereas October 2nd has historically been observed as National Custodial Workers Recognition Day, now therefore I, Connie B. Schrader, do hereby proclaim October 2nd, 2020 as City of Bastrop Custodial Workers Recognition Day. Let's have a round of applause for these. And then our next proclamation is about about planners. So it's National Community Planning Month. I have one presentation that I didn't mention during my mayor's report. I have been asked to speak to a group of grad students from Auburn University, and I will be making that presentation on October 1st. One of the professors contacted me because they had read about the Building Bastrop codes and how do you do that and how do you make that happen. And specifically, one of the things they talked about was that they had planners graduating, and my opinion, they're in their little planning world, and then they hit reality, and they don't understand why they're no longer surrounded by everyone who agreed with everything they were taught in school. And so they want me to visit with the students about how to bridge that gap. So, and I have a nephew that attends Auburn. I'm not sure, Councilmember Ennis, how you feel about me interacting with Auburn University, but I'm really honored that they've asked me to speak with them. I'm looking forward to that. So, whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places, whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live, community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. The full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorsed National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our settlements and environment. The city was awarded the Congress for New Urbanism Charter Award for Emerging Projects and the Central Texas American Planning Association General Plan Award for the Building Bastrop Block Code. And whereas the Planning Department received a Certificate of Achievement for Planning Excellence from the Texas chapter of the American Planning Association, we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional planners of the City of Bastrop and the volunteer members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Zoning Board of Adjustments, the Historic Landmark Commission, and the Construction Standard Boards, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals and volunteers. Now, therefore, I, Connie Schrader, Mayor of the City of Bastrop, do hereby recognize the month of October 2020 as Community Planning Month. Let's have a round of applause. Ms. Bills is in the room with us. And last, but by no means least, we're going to talk about fire prevention, because we know we got new fire toys coming. And before I read the proclamation, there are a lot of people who have been working on emergency management and during COVID. I don't know if there is anybody who has put in as many hours as Chief Rosales. There is nothing that goes on, and it can be somebody grabbing their heart in the middle of a grocery store, to keeping up with tropical storms and hurricanes, to keeping up with testing, to being the pivotal point for how to take care of his first responders. He is always got a smile, always has a good attitude, and I just really want to extend a special extra thanks to Chief Rosales. We are extremely blessed to have him as our fire chief. Whereas the City of Bastrop is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting in Bastrop, whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. Home fires killed 2,980 people in the United States in 2019, whereas the majority of U.S. fire deaths, 4 out of 5, occur at home each year. The fire death rate per 1,000 home fires reported to U.S. fire departments was 15% higher in 2019 than in 1980. Whereas Bastrop residents should identify places in their homes where fires can start and eliminate those hazards. Working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. Bastrop residents should install them in every sleeping room. Bastrop residents should listen for the sound of the smoke alarm. Bastrop residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. Whereas Fire Prevention Week theme is Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively highlights this year's focus on cooking safety and preventing kitchen fires at home. Now, therefore, I, Connie B. Schrader, do hereby proclaim October 4th through October 10th as Fire Prevention Week. Let's have a round of applause for our fire. All right. Oh, and Chief Eric's in the back. I didn't see you behind, so thank you for all you do to help keep us safe. With that, we are moving on to work session item number 5A. Receive a presentation and hold discussion on contracting method for water treatment plant construction manager at risk. Council, we called this CMAR back a couple months ago when we asked for some additional data versus traditional design bid bill. So, Mr. Job, you going to kick us off on this? And Council, for your heads up, and also for Colin and for those at home, when we finish this conversation, we will be moving to 9E so that we'll vote on what we've talked about so that we don't have to try to remember it 30 minutes from now. Mr. Job.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I won't take a long time. I know that you want to hear from the experts, not me. You can hear me talk all the time. But I just want to take a second to introduce Mr. Charles Wolf. I think he goes by Chuck. And then Mr. Kendall King. They're both with Freeze and Nichols, and they're going to tell you about CMAR.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Job. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It's good to be with you again. This is Kendall King speaking. When I was before this body back in June, we had a lot of questions from Council about the construction manager at risk process. And at that time, I told you that Freeze and Nichols was very fortunate to have some tremendous experts on collaborative project delivery methods in our company, and that I would bring one of them back and have a presentation and answer your questions. And so that's what we're here to do tonight. And Trey's already mentioned his name. Chuck Wolf is a leader in our company that helps us all with collaborative project delivery methods, educates our clients, educates our staff, and leads projects. So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck for the presentation, and we'll come back and answer your questions. Take it away, Chuck.
Sure. Thank you, Kendall. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So as mentioned, my name is Chuck Wolf, and I have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about an overview and applicability of cement risk delivery as it relates to your aquifer water supply facilities project. So before we dive into cement risk, maybe we should take a step back and talk a little bit about why communities tend to look for different approaches to capital project delivery. So I'm sure we've all seen headlines like these headlines, and it's not that these agencies or these communities are bad at capital project delivery. Matter of fact, the MBTA in Boston is very good at capital project delivery, but it's part of the process of capital projects. And they come with certain challenges that tend to create these headlines and other things. And really, communities have been looking for ways to address those challenges in a unique way. So what are some of the challenges and what do they ultimately build up to? So sometimes you just have simply poor workmanship. You may have quality issues in the field. There can be cost surprises or budget control challenges. You can have operational regulatory impacts, something that's very particular when you're talking about a water project, especially a water project where you're going to produce water that you're going to give to your residents for them to consume and drink and use for their quality of life. Of course, there's also project performance issues beyond these other ones that are there. They could just be the nature of the engagement and working with each other. And then, of course, the one that none of us like, which is claims mediation and litigation. But fundamentally, these all build to a simple challenge, and that is a lack of certainty in the delivery of projects. And so when we talk about collaborative delivery methods, a lot of what has happened over the past 20 to 25 years in the industry has been driven towards trying to address this lack of certainty in the delivery of projects. So in order to turn lack of certainty into greatly improved certainty, we have to address those challenges. And there's three fundamental ways that have been developed really can help us work with addressing those challenges. The first one is getting contractor input into the design process. And it's not good enough just to get contractor input. You need to get contractor input from the right kind of contractor, somebody who really knows the kind of project that you're doing. So the second option or approach is to go use qualifications-based selection for that contracting partner. And the third piece is once you have the right contractor and you've got their input into the design, to leverage that so that you can improve risk management and ultimately try to get towards improved construction productivity, where you can deliver projects faster and less expensive with the same quality that you would have had prior to the productivity enhancements. So what we want to do is we want to look at ways that we can bring all of these together to have multiple approaches to address the challenges and greatly improve that certainty. So this is not fiction. I happen to have done SEMA at risk delivery now for about 20 years. I've also done design build, and I've done a lot of design bid build as well. I've been involved in lots of different methods. This is a project I was a project manager. I'm going to show you two projects tonight. This is a project I was a project manager of. Wastewater treatment plant project, very large concrete basins. These are about 200 feet in diameter. Very complicated to construct because we want them to hold water, and we're making them out of concrete. And we were able to, with the SEMA risks input in the design phase, completely change the way we did the design to facilitate construction improvements. And through that, the project was able to save 5 weeks, that 26 days is construction days, and put $250,000 back into the budget per basin. And there were 4 basins on this project. There were other places where we saved money on this project too. So about $1 million. Put in perspective, this is a $105 million project. So $1 million is a lot of money. Percentage-wise, it's a little bit less than 1% for just this one area. And we ended up with a better quality product at the end. Another project I'd like to talk to you about a little bit is my project, my plant. So I was on the city council in Avondale, Arizona. I grew up in Texas, but we lived in Arizona for a while. So I was a city council member, a vice mayor, and we needed more water, and I'm a water engineer. So we came up with the idea for a wastewater treatment plant that we could use to reclaim water. And we had $40 million. I had to get $6 million approved in a grant from Senator John McCain, who was not a real fan of giving away earmarks. For those of you who may have known him or worked with him. So we had $40 million. The first price on the project was $48 million. This was before the SEMA at risk got involved. We got a SEMA at risk involved, or a CMAR, as you may hear it said. And we worked together, owner, designer, and SEMA at risk, to really look at things in the project that we didn't need, that didn't impact the function or the quality of the work. Things that were just around the project that we could optimize. We got, and it was delivered to the $40 million budget. And I can honestly say, with my experience in delivering wastewater treatment plants, it wouldn't have happened without the contractor's input in that case. So when we talk about SEMA at risk, it's really important to sort of look at it in comparison to design bid build. We all know design bid build. It's something that has been used in the public sector for a very long time. So just looking a bit of an overview, design bid build, you're going to have an independent contract with your designer, and you're going to have an independent contract with your builder. The approach to select the builder is going to be based on the lowest bid, based upon the design documents that you put to the marketplace. In SEMA at risk, by contrast, you still have a contract, independent contract with your designer and with your builder, but now your builder is selected on qualifications. Remember, back to those items that bring certainty, being able to have the right contractor for your project. And then cost control is through a guaranteed maximum price for the construction of the work. So some of the potential benefits of the different approaches, it's important to realize that design, bid, build absolutely has a place in the industry, has a place in public contracting. It's a well-known approach. There's many successful projects over time, and it does provide you a low bid selection of a builder. That does not necessarily mean you're getting the lowest cost for the project. It just means you're getting the lowest cost of the project you put to the street for the contractors to estimate. So risk management, productivity management, you don't get as much of a design bid build, but you get something that you know. In CM at risk, you have a contracting structure that's similar to DBB, so there's some familiarity for most public owners in that respect. Costs are still managed because there is still bidding, but now it's the CM at risk doing the bidding of their subcontractors for you that gives you the cost control. And then you do get a guaranteed maximum price before you go into construction for them to deliver the project. It allows for the builder to be selected on qualifications. And another element, getting back to those things for certainty, it incorporates the builder into the design process. So the builder is helping inform the way the design is developed. Now, there are some differences with CM at risk that are notable and we probably should talk about a little bit. The key thing about CM at risk is it is a collaborative delivery method. So what we want to try to achieve is to maximize the synergy of all three parties. And there are three parties in this particular marriage. It's the owner, the builder, and the designer. So how do the best owners in the industry do this well? Well, first off, they engage the CM at risk as early as practical in the process so that they can get that design input, that good quality contractor input into the design. They also want the builder to put together what's called a cost and schedule model, and they want the designer to use that model to guide the design. So in traditional design bid build, we tend to do a design, we throw it over the fence, they get a bid. That's not what we want in this. We want the process to be working together. The builder and the designer are working together for your objectives. As we go through the design process, we want to make sure we're reinforcing certainty. So we want to talk about cost and schedule impacts as the design develops, not simply at the end of the design process. And then finally, we want to leverage the unique skills of each party. It's important to realize that you're going to select a builder on their qualifications. You're going to select an expert at building the kind of project you want to build. You have a designer in Friesen Nichols that we certainly like to think that we're an expert in designing the project you want to build, and you're an expert in overseeing projects the way you want to see them overseen. And you want to make sure you leverage the unique skills of each party so that you can maximize the benefit of that golden triangle. Other things that owners have to work through is they have to work through the fact that over decades, maybe and what we found has been successful is when owners can break through that distrust by setting the stage for good interaction and collaboration. So the first part of this is to develop a collaborative team culture. The next part of this is to set the project success as the goal of all. Obviously, the designer and the builder want the owner to be successful, but you want the project to be successful. And that's something that you can reinforce to the team, and it gives everybody a common objective to work for. You want to build trust in the team so the team can actually proactively manage risk, because that's a great opportunity to save for cost savings and schedule control. And ultimately, you want to get the team, designer and builder, looking at ways that can improve the productivity in the construction phase, because that's what brings those schedule and cost benefits to the table. We've got a lot of experience working with owners on how to do this, both as designers as well as advisors. And this is something that I can assure you, even the first time going through CM at risk, owners do, and they do very, very well. It just comes down to taking input and advice from all the parties, and then doing what you do best, which is advocating for your projects and for your residents. So when we recommend CM at risk at FNI, why do we recommend CM at risk? And I will say we don't recommend CM at risk at all times, but there are certain situations where we do. So when we're doing this with clients, when we say CM at risk is probably the right fit for them, we really want to be able to provide a builder partner for you to work with to estimate costs, provide value engineering input, and lock in schedule and price objectives earlier in the project. This is part of getting towards that certainty. In design bid build, you will get a schedule and price lock-in at some point, but it's at the bid phase. It's after the product's been designed. If we can do that in the design phase, we get more certainty about the follow-through in construction. It also helps you improve your selection and control over your subs. So with the CM at risk, you have an advisor that's going to look to the subcontractors that they want to use and they're going to be able to help, they're going to be able to work with you to make sure that you've got transparency and you've got control over that. But they're still going to manage that cost for you under a single entity through their bidding process. They also want to provide opportunities to reduce project costs through effective risk management, as I mentioned on the prior slide, and then incorporate construction phase coordination into the design to improve operations during construction. We have to connect to your system, to the city's water system as part of this project. Having the contractor involved in the design is a significant opportunity to make sure that that is as seamless a process as possible for your residents. So why are we recommending this for this particular project, SEEM at risk for this project? We believe in this project because of the multiple complexities it has and the multiple different components, that this gives you the ability to select your contractor based on their qualifications to deliver this kind of work. You're not simply getting a low bid for someone who can do a pipeline or a treatment plant. You're getting a selection of a contractor that is an expert at delivering water supply projects. That is meaningful for how you can develop and deliver the project. Next part about this is because of the nature of this, you'd probably be looking at 4 independent bid packages if you were to take this project out and try to bid it as individual design bid builds. So you could try to get someone good at well drilling or pipelines or treatment plants, because those skill sets are not all the same. In this respect, the SEEM at risk is going to give you the opportunity to reduce your project management burden across the diverse set of construction types that make up this particular project. We think that provides you additional value as well. So if you choose to go forward with this process, we have to do some things to be able to get the SEEM at risk engaged. So we sort of took the project schedule that was presented back in June, and we've exploded a little bit to show how the SEEM at risk process could fit into this. So we would sort of take tonight as a bit of a procurement kickoff with your feedback and comments and input, and we would take that information and we would work on developing a draft contract and RFQ materials for the selection of a SEEM at risk, and then take that through the SEEM at risk procurement and contracting process. Obviously, once we make a selection, we'd like to bring that selection back to the City Council for award and for services kickoff, and then get the SEEM at risk engaged in the design process as soon as possible so they can provide benefit and input to the design process. Once we get through the design, or when we get to a point where we feel comfortable that we could take a guaranteed maximum price proposal, we'd come back to the City Council with that proposal to move the project into construction, and then the SEEM at risk would take the lead through the construction process for the project. So that's sort of how it would lay out to be able to integrate it into this particular project, as well as the potential benefits we think it could provide for the project. With that, we're available to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. That was just an excellent presentation from my perspective. Councilmember Ennis, do you have a question?
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm on top of this now, but I do have 2 questions for you, or some clarifications. And maybe the city manager will clarify one of them. Aren't we required to take the lowest bidder? How do we get around that requirement?
So SEEM at risk in the state of Texas, you are allowed to select your general contractor by qualifications, and then the low bid process happens through the selection of their subcontractors.
Okay, great. That was one question. The other one is the difference between the two is that particular aspect, right?
By and large, the one other difference is that you'll also have contractor input during the design phase, because the SEEM at risk is involved as your consultant, if you will, during the design phase of the project, and then they take over delivery of the project during the construction phase. Okay. So that's a little bit different than design bid build, where you wouldn't have them involved in the design phase, they'd only be involved in the construction phase.
Great, thank you, sir.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes, Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment. I appreciate him for calling me old, because I did it back in the day, but the design build didn't work then, and I'm almost certain it won't work now, because you have so many obstacles to go through by us going through and getting bids from each individual contractor. But the construction manager at risk takes care of all of that, and we don't have to deal with it.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. What I think what you and I have experienced back in the day is you do the design bid build and you end up with my contract and your contract and people pointing at each other and Trey saying, I just need a water treatment plant, folks, and you start dealing with change orders in those instances. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there an independent cost estimate that helps one determine what a range of reasonable costs would be?
So one of the very first items that you would have a CM at risk do is put together what we call a cost model. And it will actually be paired with a schedule model. And the CM at risk is then really carrying the independent cost estimating for the project. We at Freese & Nichols have a responsibility as your designer to review and deeply understand that model of the project for two reasons. One, it's part of our duty, professional responsibility to you to make sure that we understand what is being priced and that you're still getting an appropriate price for the project. But the second and maybe even more important element of this is we have to know what we're designing to. So if you think about a model of anything, we're creating a cost model of the project. We want it to guide the design. So our job in that respect is to deeply understand that document, question the inputs to it, question the qualifications, assumptions, what went into the document, and make sure that we understand it so we can design to it. So you end up with sort of two independent cost estimates, but the goal is to get them to one, and then to use that to drive the design. Did that answer your question?
It did, and that was a much better answer than I anticipated, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wolf. Council, I do want to share with you that I reached out to a personal friend, and I was also contacted by a vendor who is not going after this job, but stated the examples, the ability to avoid the change orders, the working to a number, the guaranteed max, and we cannot underestimate how important it is to make the right decisions during design and construction, that we minimize our operation and maintenance costs that will go on year after year after year, because you can often save a penny now and cost yourself $5 later. And that has to be borne by all of our citizens, all of our users forevermore. So there's some, and I was one that was like, I'm not really following this because I just wasn't familiar with it, but I've gotten I solicited a bunch of input, and I've also done some research, and I'm feeling quite confident about it. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes, I have a question about your guaranteed maximum price. So we've all decided something was going to cost us something, then get there and it costs more than we thought about. Who pays it if the cost goes over your maximum guaranteed price?
So there's a couple of steps in the process that we need to be careful about. One is when we come back to when the guaranteed maximum price proposal is received by the city, which is somewhere after 60% design. Closer you get to final design, the more risk you've sort of taken out of the project, you get a better price. If the price goes above the GMP, that's the short for guaranteed maximum price, at that point, the city has a couple of options. One is you can ask the contractor to go back and sharpen their pencil, which is perfectly reasonable. There's also what we call the off-ramp, and that's because you have a completely designed project, you can terminate the relationship with the CM at risk, and you could still go and bid the project. That's obviously not advisable. So the way that we manage that is that we continue to do what I sort of called dead reckoning sight-ins on that cost model, so that we're not simply designing and not looking back at it and making sure it works, so that the cost model and the GMP are the same. So when you receive the guaranteed maximum price proposal, you shouldn't be surprised at all. Once you sign the contract for the guaranteed maximum price, the only way that price can be exceeded by the contractor is if the city agrees to additional scope in the project that was not a component of the guaranteed maximum price proposal. So if you were to add another ground storage tank, for example, to the project, that's okay. You're going to get a GMP price proposal for that work. If the work stays within the contract, the contractor carries the impact of any overruns over the GMP.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yeah, to kind of follow up on that, what assurances can the city have that cost overruns won't impact the quality of the project?
So obviously, we're still going to be involved in the construction phase of the project and carry a quality assurance responsibility to make sure that the project that is delivered achieves the design intent that we had in the documents. That's our job on your behalf as your designer. And in that respect, that's probably your greatest assurance with respect to the project going forward. I will say this. CM at risk contractors understand they only get selected based upon qualifications. They also understand that it's not hard for any other city in the state of Texas to know that they had done work for the city of Bastrop. So CM at risk contractors do tend to behave differently than hard bid contractors during delivery because they know that their next client or customer may call you and ask for a reference. So when this flipped in Arizona from design bid build to CM at risk, what we generally found was there was almost an error on the side of better quality as opposed to less quality. And where we actually had to coach some contractors was it was okay to get moving and get the job done. It was because they were really worried about not being able to use Avondale, Arizona, in my case, as a reference for their next project. So there's a couple of insurances built into it, but obviously the best assurance is making sure you've got good inspection in the field and you make sure that the constructed project meets the quality that was intended in the design.
Councilmember Ennis?
How do we find our CM at risk? What's the process?
So the process for selecting a CM at risk, that's a great question. It's not entirely different than what you do when you go out and solicit qualifications for design engineers. So we're going to put together a package that will set qualifications for contractors that are specific to this project. So we want to see capabilities in pipelines. We want to see capabilities in treatment plants. We want to have folks that know how to put together water supply projects. We want them to demonstrate their experience not only delivering those projects in the construction phase, they can do that with design bid build, but we also want to see them demonstrate their ability to do that as a consultant and a CM at risk to the owner during the design phase. So we're going to look for contractors that have got good experience delivering water projects and they've got good experiences delivering CM at risk projects so they can bring both of those skill sets to the table. So we would issue an RFQ to the street. We would we'd get the SOQs back from the parties, probably do an interview process. It's something that I've always recommended. It's really important to know the kind of people you're going to be working with, especially for the city staff to know who they're going to be working with, and then make a decision based upon the team you believe has the highest qualifications to provide you the services that you need. So that's the process in general.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Wolf, one of the people that I spoke with gave me the advice because I was concerned about the incentive. If there's a guaranteed maximum price, what's their incentive for coming under that? And what I was told is that it is, I guess, standard protocol that you always have some sort of a contingency, and they encouraged us to share a percentage of the savings in the contingency back with the contractor. So even if it's just a very small percentage, it gets everybody motivated to do the right thing. Do you have an opinion on that?
I probably have many opinions on that. So certainly anything you can do that would incentivize the right behavior is worthwhile to consider. I would say this. You're going to find that most CM risk contractors are motivated by the ability to get the project done and collect the revenue for the project. So the interesting thing about this, after we started doing more CM at risk work, we learned that because contractors have a certain level of fixed costs that they have to carry every single year, it really does come into how many projects can they deliver. So there's an implied incentive in being able to go efficiently through construction. And that's part of what we want to do when we design these projects for better construction productivity. So to some extent, you can do that during the design phase and you can build the incentive into the project. That being said, I always advise that there is an owner contingency and a contractor contingency. You want to give them the ability to manage some risk on their side of the equation, and we can work out what we believe those appropriate contingencies need to be. But typically that contractor contingency remains with the contractor regardless of whether they need it or not in the project. So that's the contingency component that would go back to them. If they use it to deliver the project, then they don't obviously get a pickup on that. But if they don't need to use it, then they get to keep it.
Okay, thank you. And counsel, I asked Mr. Hoffman and if he had ever done CM at risk, and you indicated that you have experience at that. You might want to comment on that for counsel.
Sure. By no means am I the expert that Chuck is, but in my prior job, we had 2 capital projects that we used this method for. The city of Bel Air built while I was there, a new city hall, a new police and municipal court building, and the civic center building. That was all, there was several buildings, so it was all one $20 million project, and we used this procurement and contracting method. And before that, we built a $5 million, actually $6 million park project using the same method. So yes, to the extent that's helpful, I've been through this as the city manager a couple of times, and appreciate the mayor's final question about sharing the contingency, because that, in both of those cases, that came into play, and it was an incentive for the contractor to behave the right way and get the project done in a quality way. Thank you.
Council, I don't see any more questions. With your permission, I'm going to move it. Mr. Wolf and Mr. King, thank you so much. You might want to stick around. We're going to move over to 9E. Council, it can be found in the pretty much the lower half of page 3 of the agenda. Item 9E, consider action to approve resolution number R 2020-91 of City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving amendment to task order number 2 with Friesen Nichols Engineers to include a construction manager at risk services in the amount of $60,936.00 as attached in Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Council, I will tell you that one of the most important things that makes all of this work is how you write the contract, what's in that scope of contract and what's not, and that's what this money would be spent on, is making sure that we have a good, solid contract.
I think this is a very wise move, and considering that, I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Ennis and a race for the second, and I'm going to give it to Councilmember Peterson. So, any further questions? Madam Secretary, if you will call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations. We're looking forward to the advantages for our community and getting the project done on time and on budget. Thank you very much, both of you, Mr. Wolf and Mr. King.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. Council,
Thank you.
back on page 2 at staff and board reports, we do not have any. On citizen comments, I checked with the secretary before the meeting. We do not have any. On the consent agenda, we have 2 items. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent agenda? Madam Secretary, if you would please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 8A, consider action to approve City Council minutes from the September 8, 2020 budget and tax rate and regular meetings. Consider action 8B, consider action to approve the second reading of resolution number R-2020-81 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the distribution of funds to Bastrop businesses to assist businesses with expansion of their enterprise pre- and post-COVID-19 disaster and/or with the retention and training of employees during the COVID-19 pandemic and national disaster in an amount exceeding $10,000 per project and per business, providing an effective date. This concludes the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Jackson. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. The consent agenda is approved. Moving on to the top of page 3, item 9A, consider and adopt on first and final reading ordinance number 2020-25 as an emergency measure ratifying temporary emergency orders enacted by the mayor in her capacity as emergency management director in regards to the current local state of disaster for the immediate preservation of public peace, health, and safety. Council, as I mentioned at our last council meeting, you have seen that we are, we being the emergency management team and myself as director, recommending that we go to phase 3 on October 5th, but there's some information I would like to give you and the public ahead of time, and that is, as of this morning, the confirmed number of cases in all of Bastrop County is 1,789. The recoveries are 1,578, leaving 183 cases that are active in Bastrop County, and unfortunately, we have had 28 deaths. It's important to recognize that 183 is out of 80,000. You know, this is a population thing. It's not registered voters or any of that kind of stuff. It is the current population estimate before we do our census is 80. Some folks expect us to go up significantly, but of those folks, 183 are active cases. I want to share with you, because this information is available on Johns Hopkins, that the hospitalization rate is down another 2.15%. The ICU admissions is down another 6%, and that is in the 5-county MSA. So out of the 5 counties, and Bastrop is one of them, and Travis County, you know, you guys know what the MSA is, there were 32 people in ICU admissions, and the ventilators went up 5%, but it's important to note that for the 5 counties, it went from 18 people on ventilators to 19 people on ventilators. But the number has gotten so small that any movement in it by 1 or 2 can, you know, the percentages can kind of overstate that. The call center, because I always like to kind of let you guys know how things are going, we had 28 calls in the last week. So even the call center is the number of calls that they're having to do has gone down. That is a total of 2,750 calls that the call center's done since we started. And the testing that was done in all of Bastrop County was 121 last week for a total of 5,160. I told you guys last time that the testing site that we had been doing out at the rodeo arena was shut down because they're just not getting many folks doing testing. But you can get testing in both Bastrop and Elgin, and they even have Saturday testing. You go through the portal. Things have really kind of mellowed out with what we were facing beforehand. It's also important to note that you can do both nasal and mouth swab for the test. So there's some folks that not real interested in the nasal swab, but we do have the mouth swab as well. Many of you know that on September 17th that Governor Abbott signed his executive order number 31. That is available online, so I will spare you me reading every word of the executive order. But the basis and the important things that people noted out of all of that is that because of the hospitalization rates and because of the way they've seen the curve going down, that restaurants, retail, gyms, several other lists on there can go to 75%. It is very important for the public and for council to be aware of the may. It doesn't mean you have to go to 75%. People who own their business still can make decisions about their businesses. And along those lines, one of the things that is listed as libraries may go to 75%. Well, that did not mean that our library opened on September 21st. It is our library. We can open it when we feel that it's safe and follow all of the protocols. The Phase 3 includes things like, and before I go into anything on the specifics of Phase 3, please know that nothing happens until a safety plan has been submitted and approved. Just like the employee appreciation lunch that we talked about, where temperatures were taken and masks were worn and there were no more than 4 people at a table, the senior center will be open once they have an approved safety plan. And so I would fully expect that they would be submitting their safety plan right away so that when October 5th came around, they would already have their approved plan in place. The library will open with a plan. In-person meetings, allowing folks to come into our council chambers for not only council, but also our boards and commissions with appropriate safety precautions, could also begin on October 5th, which would make our first meeting in October the first meeting that we would have citizens that don't have to come, but would be allowed to come into chambers. I thought that you might ask me what are other folks doing. In the city of Elgin, their council is having their first in-person meeting this very night as we speak, and they are having their citizens in their council chambers. Smithville is not doing it until November, but I got to tell you a couple details about Smithville. They meet once a month. And in October, the reason they're not opening their council chambers is because you remember, because you guys all have great memories, that early voting starts on October 13th. They are using where they have their council meetings for their early voting. And so they would have to move all of the machines out for the meeting, sanitize everything, and move everything back. So that's the reason that they are choosing November to be when they start their in-person meetings. So the attachment was in your packet, and at this point, that's kind of an overview. City Manager, is there anything that I have missed that you would like to add?
I can't think of anything.
The city manager and I both will be happy to answer any questions. Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Relative to the seniors as well as people who might want to book the convention center, is there a template or a checklist relative to the safety and health plan that they have to submit?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And as it regards the convention center, we've worked pretty hard on that. There are guidelines that we provide for people who are interested in utilizing the space, and as the mayor indicated earlier, we'll provide those guidelines, and then we expect a safety plan to be submitted by the folks who would like to reserve it, and those safety plans are reviewed by Chief Rosales.
Chief Rosales, in his spare time, has prepared the COVID-19 preparedness and response plan and the health and safety plan template. So that is an excellent question. There's kind of a step-by-step, make sure you've addressed things. Like, for instance, at the senior center, you're not going to be having an open buffet line. That's not going to work. So there are suggested guidelines for them, and certainly Chief Rosales and others will help them with that. Councilmember Ennis?
Could we have those documents sent to us just for our own information?
Absolutely. I believe they are in the council shared folder under emergency plan. I think they're there, but we will make sure that you get the link so you can review them. I apologize, I didn't do that ahead of time. So council, with that, I'm respectfully asking for your agreement with approving the ordinance that would have this Phase 3 plan on October 5th would be the Exhibit A attachment.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Jackson?
I have a question. I'm still a little confused. I mean, I understand what you said, and I was listening to the news today, and they were talking about 33 states that the number of cases, although the death rate, I'm confused because I don't see numbers anymore. I mean, I'm not seeing numbers like I used to see because of the reporting that's coming in from the state now and from the federal government. but they were saying that there were 33 states that were still seeing increases, and Texas is one of those states. It didn't, break it down by counties or anything else, but it was saying that there was a major increase in 33 states in the U.S., and Texas was one. And that's, following the, I guess, the Labor Day and all of those different things, and they're concerned now with schools and things like that. So, are there some other, are we going to get numbers ever again, or am I just missing that?
There is information that I have access to that's not completely available to the public, but the numbers that you can get and that all of the public have access to is, of course, on the Bastrop County's Emergency Management website. And if you had been following that, we had been staying right around 150 active cases. And in the last 6 or 7 days, we've seen the increase in the active cases go from 150, 152 to 183. Dr. Walks, who is the Bastrop County health official, indicated that she believes that is the result of Labor Day and the schools opening, but most importantly, with the increase in cases, we haven't had an increase of hospitalizations. So quite frankly, it's some folks that have tested positive and have got some aches and pains and aren't going to the doctor, aren't being admitted to the hospital, aren't in ICU, and also, and I need to be careful about this, but they have been able to identify one family gathering where people were not following the rules, and that seems to be the source, a significant source of the increase. And when those types of things are identified, that makes the epidemiologists and some of the other statisticians feel more comfortable, because it's not we've seen an increase across the board and we have no idea where it's coming from. If there's an isolated case for it, and the numbers that she mentioned today, she is encouraging everyone, as we as council are leading by example and encouraging everyone to do, is that the wearing of the mask and the social distancing, which is absolutely a part of phase 3, that's what's keeping our numbers down. So I don't know specifically which numbers you're looking for that you aren't able to find, but I'm happy to help get you those or the other thing that I'm happy to do is put you in touch with Dr. Walks to see if there's any numbers that are available for the public that you are not able to locate.
Okay, I'll check with Dr. Walks then and get some more information. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes,
I'd like to move to ratify your latest temporary emergency order.
I have a motion from Councilmember
Second.
Ennis and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further question?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
I understand the masks and social distancing will still be in place.
Yes, ma'am.
We didn't lift that up. But I didn't see anything, and I wanted to make sure the public was still aware. It's still a 10-person gathering
Outside.
outside. I just want to make sure that
Yes.
everybody's still doing the 10 people. We're not opening it up to the beaches,
I fully, thank you, Councilmember Rogers. I meant to talk about that, and I very much appreciate you bringing it up. There were many of us that were surprised that he kept the number at 10 when he's raising everything else, but one of the things that it says is your social gathering of more than 10 people outside can be approved by either the local mayor or the county judge, depending on who has jurisdiction. So in discussions that I've had with both Chief Rosales and the city manager, if somebody's making a reservation at the park and they're going to have 11 people, they will submit their safety plan for the 11 people, and that's how they will obtain the approval from the mayor. So it's the difference between, what we don't want is everyone saying, oh, I promise only 9 people are going to be there, because they want the number to be under 10. We'd rather them be truthful so that we can make sure that we have the right plans in place. But that is absolutely a part of the sign-off of their safety plan that would allow any of the events to take place. Thank you so much for bringing that up and clarifying that.
One more question, Mayor.
Certainly.
I guess I'm still confused about the, I mean, of course, the social distancing and the mask wearing, I understand, but I'm hearing different things about when that masks are to be worn at all times, indoors as well as outdoors if you're with people. But there seems to be some confusion on that.
Well, I'm not really sure how to answer your question. If for a private business, we have required them to say there is a mask order in place. If they choose as a private business owner, if someone walks in, I'll just pick on Mr. Job because he's in front of me. If Mr. Job walks in and I say to Mr. Job, I really need you to put on a mask. Of course, I would never say that to him because he would already have his mask on. But if he wasn't wearing one, I would say, I need you to put on a mask. If he says, no, I've got, because our order has 7 exceptions. I have asthma, I have this, or his answer could just simply be no. I, as a private business owner, can say, well, then I need you to leave, or I can say, go in. And as the next customer that walks in, if they see that Mr. Job is not wearing a mask, they can choose whether they want to do business in that establishment or not do business in that establishment. Where we get involved in enforcement is like we would in any other enforcement. If you are inside the business of a private business owner and they ask for your compliance with a legal, reasonable thing, and you choose not to comply and you choose not to leave and you begin to make a scene, you are now going to get an opportunity to meet one of our friendly police officers from the city of Bastrop, because you are now trespassing, just like if you went and started a fight in a bar or any of those other things. So the rules and the guidelines are, if you cannot continue to maintain the distance of 6 feet, you need to have the mask on. There are exceptions to people wearing masks, and one of the exceptions specifically that the governor addressed is if you're sitting down at a restaurant, once you are seated, you can take off your mask so you can consume beverages, adult or otherwise, and your food. So I don't know, Councilmember Jackson, if that answered your question or not.
I guess more specifically, I guess, if there are public meetings or gatherings and things like that that are inside, are masks going to be required inside?
If they, just like we are sitting 6 feet apart, so we are not wearing our mask. But if we get up to go, when we take a break, if we get up to go to the bathroom, if we are moving around, we put our mask on. Our guidelines for the council chambers will be the same thing. They will have their temperature taken. They will have a mask on to get in to get their temperature taken. They will sit down, and once they are seated, if there is more than 6 feet around them on all sides and they choose to remove their mask, they can remove their mask and take part in the meeting.
Okay, that explains it a little bit better to me then. I thought you only took your mask off if you were eating, but if there's you're saying if there's 6 feet, you can take it off if there's a distance of that around you. Okay.
Council, are there any other questions before we vote? Madam Secretary, if you will please call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. There will be, I'm confident the city manager will make sure that there is a lot of information online for our citizens to know what the guidelines will be, and keep in mind that they won't go into effect until October 5th. And trust me, Chief Rosales and I are keeping our finger on the pulse, and if something unfortunately happens, then we will make adjustments as we've done, and I will be explaining to you at the next meeting why we didn't do what we thought we were going to do today. But none of this takes place until October 5th. Council, I want us to do something fun, and I'm so excited about this one, I can hardly stand it. So we are going to move to page 4 and go to item 9I. Consider action to approve the first reading of Resolution Number R 2020-93 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving Project Gummy Bears in an amount exceeding $10,000 for the project and providing an effective date and move to include on the October 13th, 2020 City Council agenda for the second reading. The Executive Director, Mr. Cameron Cox, who is now well-shaven, now that he's coming into the office, has joined us. And Council, I want to give you a very brief explanation before I turn things over to Mr. Cox, and that is timing. You know that our agendas are posted at, we try to hit noon on Thursday. There was a BEDC board meeting yesterday, Monday, and the board took a vote. So it was difficult to put we couldn't put something confidential in the packet on Thursday. It became public after the BEDC board voted on it last night, and it was hard to kind of bridge all of that. This afternoon, you received an email that showed you in the Dropbox from our city secretary of where to find the document, but I want the public to understand the reason it's listed as Project Gummy Bears, the reason it was not in the packet that was posted on Thursday is because the information was confidential at that time. And with that, Mr. Cox, it is all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor, and excellent explanation of the procedure there. And yes, this project, well, let me back up. When I first came and asked for you guys to approve of our project to purchase 402 technology for $1.3 million, that was to turn that building into a career technology and development center, and as well as a place of higher education. We have now accomplished that goal without the grant by keeping this building on the tax roll and in partnering with 2 local businesses to expand in 3 locations and spend over $2 million in capital improvements on 2 of those locations, as well as to provide a minimum of 10 years of higher education training and learning at the 402 Technology Building, where we were intending on doing that, all together with a public-private partnership with the Deep in the Heart Foundry and Water Street Millworks. And all this came about with Clint came to me and was wanting to expand Deep in the Heart Foundry into downtown. And he had been in touch with the Millworks company about they needed to expand because both of those companies have increased their demand and increased the number of contracts. They need to increase their product, and they needed additional locations. And we were working on that when Clint and I discussed my purchase of the DigTech building and how he would like to expand his business there. And I said, well, I would like you to buy that building if I could still have classroom space there. And as you and council and as everyone in Bastrop knows, in every speech I've given, part of our initiatives are to, one, we want to help in the downtown historic Bastrop, Main Street and Chestnut Street, help those buildings get up to code. And when Clint and I first met, this project was strictly Gummy Bear, singular, and it was only to help him get that building on Water and Chestnut up to code. And at the same time, talking with the Millworks company on them needing to expand and relocate. And Clint, coincidentally, had a building that he has that they can expand into. And then he can buy that building from them, 7,000 square feet, and renovate it and make it no longer a cabinet and millwork shop downtown and make it a restaurant and retail art gallery downtown that matches and goes with the whole flow of what we want and need down there. So this project started, that was the first little gummy bear that started that way. And this was expanded to gummy bears once we started talking about 402 technology and the ability to have the career technology and training center there. Then we were talking with Austin Community College, and they are now set and ready to roll and want to start having classes in November. And so with all of that happening, in conjunction with the contracts to purchase, all of that happened last week. We signed all of our, Clint signed his contracts to purchase the buildings. We signed our contract for the performance agreement after the board approved it last night. And then Clint also has an additional contract that I'm not going to make the announcement on tonight. I'm going to let him make that announcement, but he has a contract with a company to produce sculptures for them here in Bastrop that is a worldwide, world-renowned company. And that also goes into this project and phase 2 of this project, which would be to expand additional 60,000 square foot minimum space in our facility for additional career training and education and additional types of manufacturers in the art industry, such as glass blowing and powder coating, there in the next 24 to 36 months as well. And so that is the project, and that is what I'm asking you to approve tonight for this. We're going to have, like I said, $2 million of capital improvements brought into our city, and we're now, as of November, going to have higher education. And just so you know, the first 2 training certification classes being offered in November are going to be HVAC and welding. And Clint and the Foundry also want to have artistic classes there with the Art Institutes for artistic sculpturing and molding, as well as woodworking with the Millworks company. And they're working with this partnership as well to do bases for the sculptures for Deep in the Heart. And so it's not just a community-based partnership, but a business partnership as well that's developed from all of this. And so it's really exciting. I'm glad to be a part of it. And at this time, I'll open myself up to any questions.
Cameron, did you not want to show your slides that you made?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I did, yes.
Okay, he and I had.
I'm so used to not showing slides.
Council, while he's pulling that up, I thought it would be beneficial for the public. We're talking about 3 locations. Sometimes we call it Dig Tech, sometimes we call it 402 Technology. The building's been there and it's been empty for a long time. The other location we're talking about is where the Millworks is at Water and Chestnut. And the third location, just to make it super easy, is 292 Industrial Boulevard, which is not in the industrial park, but it's over there behind Super 8 and where there's some car. I know for a fact there's a transmission repair guy over there and painting, and it's an industrial sort of thing. So for me, for the Millworks, for them to want to expand, and you can imagine how difficult it would be to expand downtown, and how the sawdust, the saws, the difficulty of moving the cabinetry in and out, them moving where they can be more successful, and that space becoming a restaurant and a gallery just seems like a win-win-win. The other major thing that I want to point out to everyone is that Cameron was working on an excellent plan where we were going to get the grant, own the building, and start having it as a training center. For us to be able to still have the training available and keep the property on the tax rolls is really just a win-win-win all the way around. So he's got his slides up. I will turn it back over to Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Mayor. I was actually running the slides as you were explaining that. Okay. So that was actually a very good tandem maneuver you just pulled with me. Thank you. As the mayor just said, yes, the Millworks is moving into 292 Industrial Boulevard, and a small portion of the grant is helping in their relocation costs and move-in expenses for that. And then the 2 main areas of capital improvement and business expansion are at the buildings located at the corner of Water and Chestnut. It's currently 7,000 square feet. It's going to be completely renovated into a high-end retail art gallery. And then Clint is also looking at, and the Foundry is also looking at, partnering with the Art Institutes in the future for students to have either internships or some sort of way to work in the art gallery and learn the business of running an art gallery as well. And then, of course, what I just mentioned, 402 Technology Drive, which is where we were originally going to have a grant and purchase and own that building as an EDC, which was a great plan, but that was plan B, and this is now plan A, So we can still have that same facility, still do the same training, but also help a local business expand, keep it on the tax roll, and make it more valuable on the tax roll as well. And that concludes my slideshow.
Council, I will share with you that BEDC, as you know, has 7 directors. It was unanimously approved last night. A couple of other details. Number one, the classroom space, the agreement in the contract, if you had an opportunity to review it, and I do realize it was 17 pages and you got it late this afternoon, but it's $1 a year for the classroom space. I'm willing to help front that if that becomes a problem for the EDC. And specifically, the ACC classes of the HVAC and the welding, they have a portable classroom. So that's how they're able to do that. And one of the other questions that was asked was, well, what would the, because people know if you live in Elgin and you go to the ACC campus, you pay a different rate than if you live in the city of Bastrop and you go to the Elgin classes. But this is a certification. So the pricing on the certification, they're even working on a deal with the Workforce Commission to where if you qualify with the Workforce Commission, you can get your tuition covered for the certification. ACC needed a place to roll up their mobile classroom, drop down the door, get their stuff out. They need a place to be able to talk to the folks with computers in a classroom, and they need an area, and that the Dig Tech building gives you a great parking lot, the fence, all that kind of good stuff. So lots of details, a win-win-win to invest in not only another round of secondary education with no property tax, but also investing and repairing our downtown buildings so that whoever owns them over the years, the public is safe and protected, and it's well within the bounds of the EDC. Councilmember Rogers.
I move to approve, even though I thought you guys were buying $10,000 worth of gummy bears from me.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
So, Council, I would like a round of applause on this deal. Congratulations to Mr. Cox, and congratulations to both the Millworks and Deep in the Heart Foundry. We wish them and all businesses nothing but success. So thank you very, very much. And at that point, it is 8:11, and we are going to take a 5-minute bio break. It's 8:11, and we're in recess. All right, it is 8:17, and we are back in regular session. Council, I'm not going to jump around anymore. We're going to go to 9B, top of page 3. Consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2020-27 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, adopting a budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021, which is October 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021, attached as Exhibit A, making certain appropriations and providing that expenditures for said fiscal year be made in accordance with said budget, providing a distribution, severability, repealer, and an effective date, and proper notice and meeting. Ms. Waldron.
Okay. I just need a second reading on an ordinance, and we'll be off and running with our fiscal 2021 budget. I can answer any questions you have.
Council, any questions for Ms. Waldron? Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
I move the City Council adopt the budget presented.
I will second.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Ms. Waldron, I just want to tell you how much easier, how much I appreciated the process this year. And I also appreciate some of the little picky comments. You guys took care of that between last time and this time. And I appreciate that work being done as well. Is there any further comments or questions? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Council, we are going on to item 9C. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2020-92 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, ratifying that the adoption of the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget will require raising more revenue from property taxes than in the previous year. Ms. Waldron.
Yes, so this is a state law requirement. Anytime you are adopting or voting on a budget that is going to raise more revenue from ad valorem taxes. And so this one actually does have very specific wording on the
That can be found on page 206 of your packet.
Madam Mayor, move to ratify the vote just taken to approve the fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, which will raise more revenue from ad valorem taxes than the previous fiscal year.
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Rogers. Are there any comments? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. We are moving on to item 9D. Consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2020-28 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, adopting the tax roll, adopting the rate, and levying ad valorem taxes for the fiscal year 2020-2021 to provide revenue for the payment of budgeted municipal expenditures and providing for tax assessment, records, severability, and effective date, and proper notice and meeting. Ms. Waldron.
So yes, this is the second reading approving the tax rate at 5794, and it also has very specific wording on the recommendation.
I move that the property tax rate be increased by the adoption of a tax rate of 0.5794 per $100 valuation, which is effectively
Second.
which is effectively a 3.5% increase in the tax rate.
I have a motion. Thank you very much, Councilmember Ennis, and a second from Councilmember Jackson. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. I want to give Ms. Waldron and her team a round of applause for a job well done. She's got a lot of help, and she's the first to tell me I don't put this together by myself. And Assistant City Manager Job, you did yeoman's work while you were between the full-time city manager and you when you were doing 3 jobs, and the 4th one was getting the budget together. So special thanks to you and all the department managers. Really, I feel really, really good about the year that we're going into, and appreciate everybody's help. We got ourselves a good team. I'm happy about that. All right, let's move on to item 9F. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2020-88 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, confirming a board appointment of Jeff Halladine, place 4 on the Zoning Board of Adjustments as required in Section 3.08 of the city's charter, and establishing an effective date. Some of you know Jeff because he served on BEDC. There were some personal issues that he didn't get his application in by the deadline, but he did still want to serve. That's why we didn't interview him. But he was an excellent member. He's got an excellent background, and we had an opening on the Zoning Board of Adjustments, and I am respectfully asking for your confirming my appointment.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Jeff, and thank you for being willing to serve on our boards. We appreciate all of our volunteers. Moving to item 9G, consider action to approve resolution number R 2020-89 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the Bastrop Public Library accept a grant in the amount of $7,902 of CARES funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services and the Texas State Library and Archives Commission for the equipment and software to implement touchless, contactless self-checkout authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents and providing an effective date. Council, that gives me no greater pleasure than to ask for your permission for us to accept money. Our librarian has joined us. Ms. Sexton, is there anything you would like to add? You are muted.
Good evening, Mayor. Sorry about that. Good evening, Council. Nothing to add, but I'm just here to answer any questions if you have them.
Council, any questions?
I
No
move to
question.
approve and say thank you.
And I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Excellent job, Ms. Sexton. Any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Ms. Sexton is another department manager that has done phenomenal work during COVID. She and her team have done a great job. It is an honor to serve as the liaison to the library board, and I really appreciate the staff and the board that she works with. So thank you very much, Ms. Sexton. Go back and enjoy the rest of your evening. Council, we are moving on to page 4. We're at the top of the page, item 9H. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2020-90 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving an amendment to task order number BAS.006A. Really? Trey, that's your number? To KSA Engineers for additional engineering design services to include a new water line and diesel engine generator, which is in lieu of the gas engine generator, in the amount of $255,500 as attached in Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Mr. Jobe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Recall back in March, we did some value engineering on the site. We wanted to see if we could get more bang for our buck, and us continually looking for ways to improve on the design and things of that nature. So what you have here before you tonight is a change for $255,000. And what that does is, if you see in the bottom corner there on the right, is it's going to replace I know it's pretty tough to see there, that's why I have it in a red circle. But that right there is the start of the design for a gas engine generator. And what that does is, a diesel engine generator, and replaces what was originally designed, which was a gas engine generator. And it saves us about $500,000 in construction cost. So we'll spend a little money on design, but we'll save an approximate $500,000 just based on that for construction costs.
And then is there savings with operational or not so much?
There is. There's also about $23,000 a year in savings for not having a natural gas line and a meter and things of that nature. So it's
Year
cheaper to
after
operate.
year after year.
That's right. It's cheaper to operate, and we've also saved in construction costs. If you can shrink that back, Colin, I got one more slide. In addition to the diesel engine generator, we're also going to install, and I've highlighted it here, is just a route that follows an easement that we're currently, we've already acquired. We'll talk about that again later. But this will serve water to the plant, and that saves us about an additional $26,000 a year in operational cost, for an overall savings of about $50,000 annually.
So that's the City of Bastrop providing water to the City of Bastrop's wastewater treatment plant.
That's correct.
As opposed to purchasing it for someone who is not the City of Bastrop.
That's correct.
Councilmember Rogers.
If I remember correctly, back in March, this diesel generator was your idea, right?
It was.
I want to congratulate you again, even though we did then, for having a great idea. And I move to approve unless somebody's going to have a question.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Rogers.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson?
So just for clarity's sake, the 500,000 plus that we saved by moving away from the natural gas generator is now providing us the funds of which to pay for the diesel generator as well as the water line.
That's correct. And if you take what we've saved, plus the engineering cost, I guess there's an overall savings minus engineering cost of about $350,000 and $50,000 annually. So it's still a great deal.
I will echo Councilmember Rogers' comment. Way to go.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Job, and keep up the good work. All right, council, it is 8:29. We are going to be going into executive session. We're going to discuss two items. Item 10A, City Council shall convene and to close executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071 and 551.072 to the advice of legal counsel and to deliberate upon the acquisition of real property interests associated with the construction of wastewater treatment plant number 3 at 385 State Highway 304, Unit B, Bastrop, Texas 78602. You guys okay? And its collection systems, including all related agreements, authorizations, easements, resolutions, and associated legal actions. And item 10B, City Council shall convene and to close executive session pursuant to sections 551.071 and 551.072 of the Texas Government Code to deliberate the acquisition of property associated with the Fairview Cemetery. It is 8:30, and we are in executive session.
Trey, do we have that?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 9:22. We are out of executive session and back into regular session. We are on item number 11. Take any necessary or appropriate action on matters posted for consideration in closed executive session. On item 10A, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, relative to item 10A, I move to approve the following resolutions regarding the wastewater treatment plan R 2020-94, R 2020-95, and R 2020-96.
Second.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Nelson and a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Council, with respect to item 10B, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to authorize the city manager to negotiate for purchase of this property in accordance with the appraisal and instructions offered in executive session.
A second.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Rogers, a motion from Councilmember Ennis, a second from Councilmember Rogers. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. And now, for those of us that were in the training and we learned that adjournment requires a second, we are moving on to item number 12. Councilmember Peterson, would you like to make a motion?
We'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
I have a motion and a second, and by acclamation, it is 9:23, and we are adjourned. Folks at home, be safe, stay dry, and everyone stay healthy. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, council.